The note trembled in Eli's hands, its edges fraying as his fingers clutched it tighter. The ink smudged from his sweaty palms. "Mom, I'm gay," it read. 3 words that had taken 17 years to write and only a second to regret. He stood frozen in the kitchen, the silence roaring louder than her scream ever could. Eli's mother, Karen, had always been a storm, unpredictable, fierce, and impossible to reason with. Her faith was her anchor, a rigid Baptist doctrine that left no room for deviation, least of all for a son who loved differently. When she found the note on the counter that morning in their small Ohio town, her face twisted into something Eli didn't recognize: disgust, betrayal, maybe both. "You're no son of mine," she'd spat, her voice slicing through him like a blade. He didn't wait for the rest. He grabbed his backpack, stuffed with a hoodie and a half-empty water bottle, and ran. The August heat clung to him as he sprinted through the streets of Millfield, past the diner where he'd worked weekends, past the church where he'd once sung in the choir. His sneakers pounded the pavement, each step a desperate plea to outrun the weight of her words. He didn't know where he was going until he saw it, the Walmart at the edge of town, its neon sign glowing like a beacon in the fading light. It was the only place open, the only place he could hide. Inside, the air was cool, sterile, a sharp contrast to the chaos in his chest. Eli wove through the aisles, past families with overflowing carts, past elderly couples debating cereal brands. He didn't stop until he reached the back, where the shelves were stocked with cheap towels and discount shampoo. There, in aisle 12, he sank to the floor, his back against a display of body wash, and tried to breathe. The note was still in his hand, now crumpled into a ball. He couldn't let it go. "Rough day?" a voice asked, soft but steady, cutting through the hum of fluorescent lights. Eli's head snapped up. A boy stood at the end of the aisle, maybe his age, maybe a year older, with short black hair and a faded green t-shirt. His name tag read Caleb Associate. Eli's first instinct was to bolt, but something in Caleb's eyes, warm, unguarded, made him stay. "Ah, yeah," Eli muttered, his voice barely above a whisper. He shoved the note into his pocket, but not before Caleb's gaze flicked to it. "Want to talk about it?" Caleb asked, leaning against a shelf, his tone casual but kind. He didn't push, didn't pry, just waited, like he had all the time in the world. Eli shook his head, but the words spilled out anyway. "I told my mom. Wrote it down. Left it for her. She didn't take it well." His voice cracked, and he looked away, embarrassed by the tears pricking his eyes. Caleb didn't flinch. "That's heavy," he said, sliding down to sit across from Eli, the linoleum floor cold beneath them. "My dad wasn't thrilled either when I came out. Kicked me out for a week before he cooled off. I crashed at a friend's place. But it's scary, not knowing what's next." Eli's breath hitched. "You're gay?" "Yeah." Caleb's smile was small but real. "Been out for a year. It gets better, but it sucks at first." For the first time that day, Eli felt something loosen in his chest, like a knot unraveling. Here, in the middle of a Walmart aisle, with the scent of lavender detergent in the air, he wasn't alone. Caleb didn't know him anything, but he stayed. They talked about nothing, about everything until the store's closing announcement crackled over the speakers. "Where you headed after this?" Caleb asked as they stood, brushing dust off their jeans. Eli shrugged, the weight of his reality crashing back. "I don't know. Not home." Caleb hesitated, then scribbled something on a receipt. "This is my number. If you need a place to crash, or just someone to talk to, I'm around. Eli took the receipt, his fingers brushing Caleb's for a fleeting second. It was the first time in hours he didn't feel like running. Eli clutched the receipt with Caleb's number as he stepped into the humid Ohio night, the Walmart parking lot glowing under flickering streetlights. His phone was dead, his backpack light, and his options non-existent. The idea of calling Caleb felt reckless, trusting a stranger after one conversation, but the alternative was sleeping on the street. And Eli wasn't ready for that. He found a gas station payphone, the kind he thought only existed in old movies, and dialed the number with shaking fingers. Caleb picked up on the second ring. Eli, you okay? The concern in his voice was disarming. Eli swallowed hard. I don't have anywhere to go. Stay put. I'm coming. Caleb's response was immediate. No hesitation. 20 minutes later, a beat-up Honda pulled up, Caleb at the wheel, still in his Walmart vest. Hop in, he said, offering a half-smile that didn't mask the worry in his eyes. Eli slid into the passenger seat, the car smelling faintly of coffee and worn leather. Where are we going? He asked, his voice small. My place, Caleb said. It's not much, but it's safe. My roommate's cool, and we've got a couch. The drive was quiet, the radio humming a soft indie tune. Eli stared out the window, watching Millfield's sleepy streets blur past strip malls, churches, the occasional American flag flapping in the breeze. He wanted to thank Caleb but didn't know how. The words felt too big, too raw. Caleb's apartment was a cramped second-floor walk-up, cluttered with mismatched furniture and stacks of vinyl records. His roommate, a lanky guy named Marcus with a quick laugh, didn't bat an eye when Caleb introduced Eli as a friend who needs a place to crash. They ordered pizza, and for a few hours, Eli almost forgot the note, his mom's voice, the ache in his chest. But sleep didn't come easy. On the lumpy couch, Eli replayed the day Karen's rage, the note's smudged ink, Caleb's steady presence. He wondered what his mom was doing now. Was she crying? Praying for his soul? Or had she already erased him from her life? The thought made his throat tighten. The next morning, Caleb was up early, making coffee in a chipped mug. You don't have to figure it all out today, he said, handing Eli the mug. But you can't stay on the run forever. What's your plan? Eli stared into the coffee, the steam curling up like a question mark. I don't know. I've got some savings from the diner, maybe enough for a bus ticket. But where would I go? Caleb sat across from him, his expression serious. There's a shelter in Columbus, about an hour away. They're good with kids like us LGBTQ kids. I stayed there for a bit after my dad kicked me out. They can help with housing, jobs, even school. Columbus, Eli repeated, the word foreign but heavy with possibility. You think I could start over there? You can start over anywhere, Caleb said. But it's easier with people who get it. Eli nodded, the idea taking root. But leaving Millfield meant leaving everything: his mom, his past, the only life he'd known. And yet, staying wasn't an option. Not after the note. That afternoon, Caleb drove him to the bus station, the receipt with his number now tucked safely in Eli's wallet. Text me when you get there, Caleb said, leaning against his car. And don't be a stranger. Okay. Eli managed a small smile. Thanks. For everything. As the bus pulled away, Eli watched Millfield shrink in the rearview mirror, Caleb's figure growing smaller until he was gone. The road to Columbus stretched ahead, uncertain but open, and for the first time, Eli felt a flicker of hope. Columbus was louder, brighter, and bigger than Eli had expected. The bus station smelled of diesel and stale coffee, and the city pulsed with life cars honking, pedestrians weaving through crosswalks, neon signs flashing. Eli's backpack felt heavier now, the weight of his decision settling in as he stepped onto the sidewalk. The shelter Caleb had mentioned, Haven House, was a nondescript brick building tucked between a laundromat and a pawn shop. Inside, it was warm, with mismatched furniture and posters about mental health and pride events plastered on the walls. A woman named Rosa, with kind eyes and a clipboard, welcomed him. "You're safe here," she said, and Eli wanted to believe her. The first night was rough. Eli shared a room with two other teensy trans girl named Jamie and a quiet boy named Devin who barely spoke. The bunk beds creaked, and the thin mattress did little to ease the ache in Eli's back. But it was the silence that kept him awake, the absence of his mom's voice, even her anger, leaving a void he didn't know how to fill. He texted Caleb before bed, "Made it to Columbus. Haven House seems okay. Thanks again." Caleb's reply came almost instantly, "Glad you're safe. Keep me posted." The words were simple, but they grounded him, a tether to the boy who'd sat with him in aisle 12. Days at Haven House blurred into a routine. Group therapy sessions, job workshops, meals in a crowded dining hall. Eli learned that most of the kids here had stories like his parents who couldn't or wouldn't understand, homes that no longer felt like home. Jamie, with her sharp wit and bright purple hair, became his first friend. "You'll figure it out," she told him over lunch one day. "We all do, eventually." But figuring it out wasn't easy. Eli's savings were dwindling, and the thought of finding a job in a city he barely knew was daunting. Rosa helped him apply for a part-time gig at a coffee shop, but the interviews were awkward, his nerves betraying him. He kept Caleb's number close, texting him updates, small victories, like acing a barista test, and setbacks, like bombing an interview. Caleb's responses were always steady, encouraging, a reminder that someone out there cared. One evening, Rosa pulled Eli aside. "There's a community center nearby," she said. "They run a support group for LGBTQ youth. Might be good for you to meet more people." Eli hesitated. The idea of sharing his story with strangers made his stomach twist. But the alternative, staying stuck in his head, replaying his mom's words, was worse. So he went. The community center was a cozy space, with fairy lights strung across the ceiling and a circle of folding chairs. The group was small, maybe 10 people, mostly teens and young adults. Eli sat quietly at first, listening to stories of rejection, resilience, and small triumphs. Then it was his turn. "My name's Eli," he started, his voice shaky. I came out to my mom with a note. She kicked me out. I've been at Haven House for a week, and I'm just trying to figure out what's next." The room was quiet, but not the heavy kind of quiet he'd felt at home. It was warm, attentive. A girl across the circle, Lena, spoke up. "I wrote a note too," she said. "My parents didn't speak to me for a year. But I'm here, and you are too. That's something." Eli nodded, the lump in his throat easing. For the first time, he felt seen, not as a problem to be fixed, but as a person with a story worth hearing. The coffee shop job came through after a second interview, and Eli started the next week. It was a small place called Brood Awakening, with exposed brick walls and a constant hum of conversation. The work was grueling: early mornings, demanding customers, the relentless pace of rush hour, but it was his. For the first time, Eli felt a sliver of independence, a paycheck that meant he could stay at Haven House a little longer. He texted Caleb a photo of his first paycheck, a modest $212. 37. Officially a barista now, he wrote. Caleb's reply was a string of clapping emojis and a simple, "Proud of you." Eli stared at the message longer than he meant to, warmth spreading through him. But independence didn't erase the past. At night, Eli still dreamed of his mom's kitchen, the note on the counter, her voice echoing. He hadn't tried to contact her, and she hadn't reached out either. The silence was a wound that wouldn't close. One afternoon, during a slow shift at the coffee shop, Eli's phone buzzed. It was a voicemail from an unknown number. His heart sank as he listened to Karen's voice, clipped and formal. "Elijah, this is your mother. I need to talk to you. Call me back." He didn't. Not that day, or the next. The voicemail sat in his phone like a ticking bomb, and every time he thought about calling, his chest tightened. What could she want? Forgiveness? An apology? Or just another chance to tell him he was wrong? He told Jamie about it during lunch at Haven House. "Maybe she's coming around," Jamie said, twirling a strand of purple hair. "Or maybe she's not. You don't owe her anything, Eli. Not after what she did." "I know," Eli said, but the words felt hollow. He missed her, not the anger, but the mom she'd been before the note. The one who'd made pancakes on Sundays, who'd laughed at his terrible jokes. Could that version of her still exist? He brought it up at the support group that week. Lena, the girl who'd also written a note, listened quietly as he spilled his fears. "It's okay to want her in your life," she said. "But you get to decide the terms. If she can't meet you there, that's on her." Eli nodded, but the decision felt impossible. He texted Caleb instead, needing an anchor. "Mom called. Left a voicemail. I don't know what to do." Caleb's reply was quick. "Take your time. You don't have to decide today. Want to talk it over? I can drive up this weekend." The offer caught Eli off guard. Columbus was an hour from Millfield, and Caleb had his own life work, friends, whatever else he did when he wasn't saving runaway teens in Walmart aisles. But the idea of seeing him again, of hearing his steady voice in person, made Eli's heart race. "Yeah," he texted back. "I'd like that." Caleb arrived that Saturday, his Honda pulling up outside Haven House. He looked the same green t-shirt. Easy smile, but there was something new in the way he looked at Eli, a quiet intensity that made Eli's cheeks flush. They walked to a nearby park, sitting on a bench under a sprawling oak tree. "Tell me about the voicemail," Caleb said, his tone gentle but direct. Eli recounted it. Every word. Every pause. "I'm scared," he admitted. "What if she wants me to come back? But only if I change." Caleb leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "You don't have to change for anyone, Eli. Not her. Not me. Not anyone. You're enough." The words hit harder than Eli expected, and he blinked back tears. Caleb didn't push, just sat there, the space between them warm and safe. For the first time, Eli wondered if safety wasn't just a place, but a person. Eli didn't call his mom back, but the voicemail haunted him. Work at Brood Awakening became his refuge. The rhythm of steaming milk and grinding beans a distraction from the questions swirling in his head. He was getting better at the job, even earning a few regular customers who smiled when he remembered their orders. But every quiet moment brought her voice back, formal and distant, demanding answers he wasn't ready to give. Caleb's visit had left a mark. They texted daily now. Small updates about work or random memes. But also deeper things: Eli's fears about his mom. Caleb's stories of rebuilding after his dad's rejection. Their conversations felt like a lifeline, pulling Eli through the uncertainty. When Caleb suggested another visit, Eli didn't hesitate. "Come whenever," he wrote, and meant it. The second visit was different. Caleb arrived with a playlist for the drive, and they ended up at a diner instead of the park, splitting a plate of fries and talking until the waitress started giving them pointed looks. Caleb told Eli about his plans to start community college, maybe study social work. "I want to help kids like us," he said, his eyes bright with purpose. Kids who feel like they've got nowhere to go. Eli felt a pang of admiration, mixed with something else, something warm and unfamiliar that made his pulse quicken. He pushed it down, focusing on the fries. "You're already doing that," he said quietly. "You helped me." Caleb's smile was shy, almost embarrassed. "You'd have figured it out. I just gave you a push." Back at Haven House, Jamie noticed the change in Eli. "You're glowing," she teased, nudging him as they folded laundry. "Is it that Walmart guy?" Eli's face burned. "He's just a friend." "Uh-huh," Jamie said, smirking. "Friends don't drive an hour to share fries." Eli didn't argue, but her words stuck with him. Was it more than friendship? He wasn't sure he was ready to find out. Not when his life was still a mess. Not when his mom's voicemail was still unanswered. The shelter organized a pride event that month, a small festival in a community park. Eli volunteered to help, setting up booths and handing out flyers. It was his first pride, and the energy was electric: rainbow flags, laughter, music pulsing through the air. Jamie dragged him to a drag show, and for a few hours, Eli felt light, unburdened. Caleb showed up unexpectedly, wearing a rainbow wristband and that familiar green t-shirt. "Couldn't miss your first pride," he said, grinning. They wandered the festival together, sharing cotton candy and dodging water balloons from a nearby game booth. When a slow song played over the speakers, Caleb hesitated, then held out his hand. "Dance." Eli froze, his heart pounding. He'd never danced with anyone, let alone a boy, in public. But Caleb's hand was steady, his smile encouraging. Eli took it, and they swayed awkwardly, surrounded by strangers who didn't care, who cheered and clapped like it was the most normal thing in the world. For those 3 minutes, Eli wasn't the boy who'd run from his mom, or the kid crashing at a shelter. He was just Eli, dancing with Caleb, feeling the world shift under his feet. But reality crept back. That night, alone in his bunk, Eli listened to his mom's voicemail again. Her voice was softer this time, or maybe he was imagining it. He typed out a text: "I am okay. In Columbus. Can we talk?" But didn't send it. Not yet. The text to his mom stayed unsent, but Eli couldn't stop thinking about it. Work, the shelter, even Caleb's visits, they were all pieces of a new life. But they didn't erase the hole his mom had left. He wanted to hate her, to let go of the hope that she'd change. But a part of him still clung to the idea of reconciliation. At the coffee shop, Eli's manager, a gruff but kind woman named Trish, noticed his distraction. "You okay, kid?" she asked one morning, wiping down the counter. Eli shrugged, steaming a latte. "Family stuff." Trish nodded, like she'd heard it before. "Family's messy. But you're doing all right here. Don't forget that." Her words were a small comfort, but they didn't solve the problem. Eli needed to decide: reach out to his mom or let her go. He brought it up at the support group, his voice steadier now. I want to talk to her, he admitted. But I'm scared it'll just hurt more. Lena, who'd become a quiet source of wisdom, leaned forward. You can't control what she says, but you can control how you respond. Set boundaries. Protect yourself. Eli took her advice to heart. He drafted a new text. I'm in Columbus. Safe. I want to talk, but only if you're ready to listen. It was short, firm, a line in the sand. He showed it to Caleb during his next visit, over milkshakes at the diner. It's good, Caleb said, reading it over. It's honest. You're giving her a chance, but you're not begging. Eli sent it before he could overthink it. His phone felt like a live wire in his hand, buzzing with possibility. When no reply came that day, or the next, he tried to let it go. He focused on work, on the shelter, on the small community he was building. Caleb started visiting more often, sometimes staying for the weekend. They explored Columbus together, thrift stores, food trucks, a quiet bookstore where Eli found a used copy of a queer poetry anthology. Caleb bought it for him, insisting it was an investment in your soul. Eli laughed, but he read it every night. The words a reminder that he wasn't alone in his feelings. One evening, as they sat on the roof of Haven House, watching the city lights flicker, Caleb turned to him. Can I ask you something? Eli nodded, his stomach fluttering. Do you ever think about us? Like, more than friends? Caleb's voice was soft, vulnerable, his eyes searching Eli's. Eli's breath caught. He'd thought about it every time Caleb smiled, every time their hands brushed. But admitting it felt like stepping off a cliff. I do, he said finally, his voice barely audible. But I'm scared. Everything's so new. Caleb nodded, his expression gentle. I get it. No pressure. I like you, Eli. A lot. The words hung between them, heavy and sweet. Eli didn't know how to respond, so he didn't. He just leaned closer, their shoulders touching, the city sprawling below them. It wasn't an answer, but it was enough for now. 2 days later, his mom replied. A single text. I'm ready to listen. Can we meet? Eli's heart raced, fear and hope colliding. He showed the text to Caleb, who squeezed his hand. You've got this, he said. And I've got your back. Eli chose a neutral place to meet, his MoMA small cafe in Columbus, halfway between Haven House and the bus station. He arrived early, his hands sweaty as he fidgeted with a napkin. Caleb had offered to come, but Eli needed to do this alone. Still, knowing Caleb was a text away gave him courage. Karen walked in at exactly 2 p.m., her face drawn, her eyes scanning the room until they landed on Eli. She looked older than he remembered, her hair grayer, her posture stiff. She sat across from him, clutching her purse like a shield. Elijah, she said, her voice softer than he expected. I didn't know if you'd come. I almost didn't, Eli admitted, his throat tight. But I wanted to hear you out. She nodded, her fingers twisting the strap of her purse. I was wrong, she said, the words slow, deliberate. The way I reacted, it wasn't fair. I was angry, scared. But I've been reading, talking to Pastor John. He's been helping me understand. Eli's heart thudded. Understand what? That you're still my son, she said, her voice breaking. I don't fully get it. This, being gay. But I don't want to lose you. The words were a lifeline, but they came with strings. Eli could see it in her eyes, the hope that he'd compromise, that he'd fit back into her world. "Mom," he said, steadying his voice, "I'm not going to change who I am. I can't. If you want me in your life, you have to accept that." Karen's face tightened, but she didn't argue. "I'm trying," she said. "It's not easy, but I'm trying." They talked for an hour, the conversation fragile but honest. She asked about his life in Columbus, about the shelter, the coffee shop. He told her about Caleb, carefully, watching for her reaction. She flinched but didn't interrupt. When they parted, she hugged him, a stiff, awkward embrace, but a hug nonetheless. Eli texted Caleb as soon as she left. It went, "Okay. She's trying. I don't know what's next." Caleb's reply was immediate. "That's huge. Eli. Proud of you. Want to celebrate." They met at the diner, the same one where they'd shared fries. Over milkshakes, Eli recounted every detail, his voice a mix of relief and uncertainty. Caleb listened, his presence steady as always. "You did something brave today," Caleb said, his hand resting on the table, close to Eli's. "You set your terms. That's not nothing." Eli smiled, the weight in his chest lighter. "I couldn't have done it without you." Caleb's eyes softened. "You're stronger than you think." That night, Eli lay in his bunk, staring at the ceiling. His mom's hug lingered, a fragile bridge to a past he wasn't sure he could reclaim. But Caleb's words, his presence, felt like a promise of something new, future where he could be himself, unapologetically. He texted Caleb one last time before sleep. "Can we talk about us soon? I'm ready." Eli's life settled into a rhythm. Work at Brood Awakening kept him busy, and Haven House started to feel less like a temporary stop and more like a home. He and his mom texted occasionally, short, careful messages, testing the waters. She was still grappling with his identity, but she hadn't shut him out again. It wasn't perfect, but it was progress. Caleb became a constant. Their weekends together grew longer, movie nights at the shelter, walks through Columbus's art district, quiet moments on the Haven House roof. Eli felt the pull between them growing stronger, undeniable. He was ready to name it, to step into whatever it was they were building. One evening, as they sat in Caleb's car outside Haven House, Eli took a deep breath. "I like you," he said, the words spilling out before he could stop them. "Not just as a friend. I mean, I want to be with you." Caleb's face lit up, his smile wide and unguarded. "I was hoping you'd say that," he said, leaning closer. Their first kiss was soft, tentative, the world fading to just the two of them, the hum of the car's engine a quiet backdrop. Dating Caleb didn't erase Eli's struggles. Money was tight, and Haven House wasn't a long-term solution. But with Caleb's encouragement, Eli applied for a scholarship to a local community college, hoping to study graphic design. He got in, and the news felt like a victory, a step toward a future he could shape. One day, Rosa called him into her office. "You've been here 3 months," she said. "You're doing great, Eli, but it's time to think about what's next. There's an apartment program for youth aging out of the shelter. You'd have your own place, subsidized rent. Interested?" Eli's heart leapt. His own place, a real home. He told Caleb that night, and they celebrated with cheap pizza and a playlist of Caleb's favorite songs. "You're building something real," Caleb said, his voice proud. "You're going to be okay." The apartment was small, a studio with peeling paint and a noisy radiator, but it was Eli's. He moved in with a thrift store couch and a box of books, including the poetry anthology Caleb had bought him. Caleb helped him hang fairy lights, turning the space into something warm, something his. Months later, Eli invited his mom to see the apartment. She came, hesitant, her eyes taking in the small space, the pride flag pinned to the wall. They didn't talk about it directly, but when she hugged him goodbye, it was softer, longer. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, and Eli believed her. That night, he and Caleb sat on the couch, their hands intertwined. "You saved me. You know," Eli said, his voice quiet. "That day in Walmart, I was lost. You gave me a place to start." Caleb shook his head. "You saved yourself, Eli. I just showed you the aisle." Eli laughed, the sound light and free. He looked around his tiny apartment, at the boy beside him, at the life he was building. The note that had shattered his world was just a memory now, a piece of paper that couldn't define him. He was home not just in the apartment, but in himself, in the love he'd found, in the safety he'd created. And that, he realized, was enough.